Welcome to Beyond Insights. Today we're exploring a critical shift in the business world. While data is abundant, the real power lies in transforming raw numbers into compelling narratives and clear strategic direction. We're witnessing the rise of a new kind of leader, the data whisperer. There are individuals who can take complex financial figures and make them speak, guiding businesses towards smarter decisions and sustained growth. Join us as we chat to Gavin Simpson, CEO and founder of Cloud Finance and Accounting. We delve into how forward-thinking finance leaders are becoming data whisperers, equipped with the tools and mindset to understand complex financial information and communicate its story clearly across the organization. Welcome, Gavin. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's always great to have an international guest in our studios. Before we get started, maybe just give us a bit of background into what you do at Cloud Finance.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me.
Big pleasure.
International guest sounds very grandiose. In terms of background, very briefly, I'm a chartered accountant, worked in industry, worked as an FD, was involved in a temporary labour business, which I owned part of and sold.
Okay.
And then I was consulting. And then during this little thing called COVID, which you may remember, I realised there was a gap for outsourced finance teams. So that means we provide finance teams for other SME businesses. And I found we can free up the owner's time, give them better financial input than if they hired a bookkeeper or if they hired an admin assistant. We tend to give them a lot of what they need. And help them win. I think that's what it says in my LinkedIn bio.
Nice. So just looking at the traditional aspect of, the accounting fraternity and of course, we're going to spend quite a bit of time today talking about how that is evolving. It's moved from the traditional historic reporting, number crunching, very static. How are things changing? What are some of the trends that you're noticing?
So the trend, I would say, is there should be less number crunching. The tech should do it for us. Now, I think a lot of people maybe say, like, they're waiting for a big red button. My friend Raz calls it, it's like you press the red button, it does everything.
Yeah.
It's not quite like that, but there are a lot of little red buttons
that
a good finance person should know how they can enable them to do their monitoring aspect of their job much quicker. The tech crunching that you mentioned.
As an accounting practice or accounting professional, what sort of core skill set do you think is needed in order to move from this traditional reporting space to where the landscape is going at the moment?
Yeah, so like we were saying, if it's evolving to be more forward-focusing, what we need, I'd say three things. You need empathy, so you need to understand who actually needs the figures, because it's not an accountant most of the time. You need the ability to zoom out and not get stuck in the weeds of the numbers, to zoom out and think, hey, what do these actually mean? And then, touch on the earlier one, you need to know what the tech is so you can enable that.
Yeah.
And I would say then, with those three things, you need to take the data and make it into a story. Contextualize the story as in the context of the end user is most important.
Yeah.
And it's not like these are the numbers. It's like, why do these numbers matter and what can you do about it?
Yeah.
That's much more important than this is what happened 2 months ago.
Absolutely. I suppose big focus on moving away from lag data that you see in a profit and loss and a balance sheet to looking at the data and what is the data telling us now? Exactly.
And peeling the layers back. So we call it pyramid reporting is, you want to zoom out to start with, but then to be able to dig in, which Sift helps with.
Yeah.
So we had a client who does, without naming them, they did a lot of goods which was sold in supermarkets.
Yes.
We had a conversational, gross profit's down. Well, you can see that.
Yeah.
But actually, these are your products. Why is gross profit down? Where are the costs going? And also, what happens in the future if we raise this by X or raise this product by Y? Is it across the board? Is it certain products?
Yeah.
And to dissect and answer all those questions first, and then in the future, if you increase this by £1 and the supermarket accepts it, what will your figures look like?
Yeah, and that's something a profit and loss or balance sheet or cash flow statement's not going to show you.
No.
Perfect. So what are some of the common frustrations that you see on a day-to-day basis when trying to communicate this sort of information to non-finance stakeholders or clients?
Oh, so frustrations from like the accounting side, if you like?
Well, both maybe.
Yeah, because I actually think more about frustrations from the other side. But on that side, okay, something that probably sits between both is a lot of accountants, by their nature, want perfect data.
Yeah.
So like, you've seen the film Accountant with Ben Affleck, right?
Yeah.
Where he he's obviously extreme case, but it's hard to accept if it's not perfect. But sometimes, not quite perfect with assumptions, but available 2 or 3 days after month end is much better than perfect 2 months later.
Yeah.
So there's that kind of battle, I think, between business owners need to have live data to react on it, whereas accountants by their nature often want perfect data. So that can be a frustration on both sides. I think frustration where sometimes accounting language doesn't translate into meaningful things.
Yeah.
So I think there should be a survey at some point of how many people actually read management accounts. You know what I mean? Because if they're done and they don't make any sense, not read, then they're not worth anything, unfortunately. So there's definitely a frustration where, something might come out which was in the numbers, but the end user didn't read them from the numbers because of the way, or the jargon, or the way it's set out was done. Absolutely.
I think jargon's a killer from industry to industry. So being able to effectively communicate to your customer or client who has a layman's understanding of financial terms is really, really important so that they take away what needs to be done.
Exactly, or what does it mean in their terms? So often you have to get to the stage of, sounds dramatic, but if you don't do this, you will have this less cash in your bank account by the end of the year.
Yeah, without sounding too dramatic.
Exactly, exactly, yeah.
Perfect, so just diving into a bit more detail and talking about the shift from hindsight to foresight. How critical is it for finance teams to move away what has happened to what will happen? And how does that conversation usually go? How is it transformed, in those conversations that you're having with your clients?
Yes, like we said, a good finance team is less about monitoring what happened in the past, more about what happened in the future, repeating what you said. So I'd say the world changes quicker now with tech, information, new startups, AI. And there's more uncertainty, so people need to move quickly.
Yeah.
So for us, I think going back to the question you were saying, what impact can have on strategic decisions? It can really drive the decisions. So I was thinking of examples. So we had like a SaaS client, and we were forward-looking, doing the projections with them based on the numbers to date, and playing with assumptions, what I call it. What factors, what levers can you pull to see how your business might turn out?
Yes.
And they were all about driving new business. Cost of customer acquisition, we can get it down. And then someone pointed out, well, what's your current churn rate? And it was pretty high. It was like 15%-ish. Sure. Anyway, that evolved to a conversation of, well, if we can get the churn rate down to 10% by hiring some more customer support, actually that's a lot cheaper than trying to chase the sales, which is probably less sexy. But
it's really expensive to get new business, but if you can retain the customers that you've got, it's a win, right?
Exactly. But from an accountant's point of view, what can we do? We can model out if you spend this and has this effect and this is impact to you.
Yeah, I suppose from a business owner's perspective, it is important to trust in the vision of their accountant and trust your accountant as a trusted advisor at the end of the day as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
They know what they're talking about.
Definitely,
right?
absolutely.
You guys studied a long time, so
hopefully.
Just chatting a bit about visual reporting. This is or has got to be a key component in communicating the story that the data has to tell.
Yeah.
And I think quite useful for a client that might have a layman's understanding of finance and accounting terms and things like that. How have you seen that transform in your business and your reporting to clients?
So a lot of the tech, going back to what you said earlier, has helped enable this transformation. Get numbers quicker, you can do more with it easily. I think analogy which one of the partners at EY told me when I was training, which I'll try and get right, they said there's generally two kinds of people, right? People who like data and big spreadsheets, people who like visuals and graphs.
Right.
And accountants tend to be more of the tables and spreadsheets and logs, whereas most people probably prefer graphs so they can see it quickly. So the analogy that they then spoke about was, if you're flying a plane, you don't look at all the flight logs of exactly what's happening. You look at a dashboard of 3 or 4 key things. Yeah. So you need to know what those key numbers are. And if something goes wrong, which I'm not a pilot, so I might lose the knowledge, but you know what I mean? If one of them dips, it's like, whoa, that's happening, check that engine, things happen off that. But you need to start with the dashboard for clarity's sake. And numbers are like the same thing. You can have a dashboard for the key numbers to really get clarity and quickly read what's happening. But to be able to then, with assistance, drill down into them.
Yeah. I love the metaphor of the pilot and the dashboard.
Did that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And it's something that I've heard before. And I think, with the advent of cloud accounting providers and maybe a bit of a plug to Sift, being able to share that dashboard of those key metrics that are really, really crucial to your business on a daily basis or a monthly basis is a game changer.
Exactly. It's all about the end user. Why does it matter to them? So, like recruitment businesses, how many placements have they had per person? Not just this is your gross profit. Because that means less to the person at the desk. But on the other hand, if you've got 10 salespeople and they've got different numbers of placements, well, can we work with that person to get them up? Or are they underperforming compared to what the base is?
Yeah, very important. What tip or key piece of advice would you have to businesses that might be starting out or even that are existing and are quite mature in trying to future-proof their business processes?
So key tip. So this is probably slightly led towards finance, but I'll try and make it related. So my first tip is to get get the basics right. And for me, the basics are like your financial close process and all your bookkeeping stuff just nailed, done quickly. Because if you can't get them right on time, then all the good stuff that you spoke about before, it's not worth doing. There's probably an analogy, I've used one already, but about foundations and buildings and all that stuff. So you need the foundations right and the basic bookkeeping, basic purchase ledger, sales ledger, closing your month end quickly. There's no reason not to close a month end in like 5 days.
Yeah.
If I remember I started as an FD, I was told, oh, you can't close it in 5 days because of this. And I'm like, guys, there's companies that turn over like Cisco, they're tens of, they close it in 2 days. Wow. I'm sure we can close it in like 5 or whatever it was at the time.
So would you say solid foundational processes and
so go back to underpin them, make sure anyone can do them, write them out, all the boring stuff, but it needs to be done. Do that first, do it well.
Yeah. So for those clients, just to chat a bit more about that, for clients that are struggling with the basics, do you think there is an element of reluctance to change because something's broken in their organization? They don't know how to fix it, so there's no point of even trying to change the status quo.
And sometimes they don't know it can be fixed. Like I guess, like our firm, we won business on the back of that because I kind of have a gut feel often we can do things more efficiently than what they've been doing.
Yeah.
But sometimes they don't know it can be fixed.
Yeah.
And then it's hard going back to you because you said about is there tips that you give for processes? Well, one is getting those foundations, financial, the ones we mentioned, and then specifically financial. The second one is once you've done that, if I was partially to be FD of a business, start working with the end users then for what they're going to see so that they own the report. So it's not like this is a P&L, what do you think of it? It's like, well, what do you need to know? How can we relate this to numbers? If this is marketing, they want to know customer acquisition cost, whereas if this is the guy running the factory, he wants to see the overhead and split per department, like all those kind of things.
Yeah.
But get them bought into what they're saying.
Absolutely, yeah. If they're not bought into it, there's never going to be that change into the new process and how it can really transform their business, I suppose.
Exactly. If you're going in to try and sort out a 30 million business, they're not your numbers, they're everybody else's numbers. And your job is to help them understand them and then, influence them.
Yeah, makes sense. How does your practice traditionally report, would you say? Is it still with PDFs and spreadsheets to a lot of your clients? Or are you seeing that mix to your clients going predominantly visualizations? Or is it a mix of both where you have seen that reluctance to kind of, away from the status quo?
It's a mix of both, to answer your question. And sometimes there's depending on the type of client, how much value you can give. If you're a certain turnover, you can only give so much. So once you've got a few extra graphs and things like that, they maybe don't need like the cost of a dynamic dashboard. On the other hand, you have a bigger turnover business. We have construction businesses with big contracts. They want to see where they are in their job costings like all the time. So it's the most important thing for them.
Makes sense. I'm keen on hearing a success story or two. Obviously, you don't have to give names of your clients that have gone through this transformation and how this data whispering has transformed their business and their business processes. Okay,
so there was one, I'll say SaaS business, but they weren't quite a software as a service business. They were a software business. And we took them on about 2 years ago now. But when we took on the current level business, got their accounts up to speed. We're doing forecasting, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
And I noticed their maintenance, as in the support income they were receiving, was pretty static, but their sales were growing. And I was like, surely this, because they've got other customers, this keeps going up.
Yeah.
We dug into this. Long story short, the salesperson said, no, customers don't pay for maintenance here because they don't need it. And then they don't like it. And then there's a lot of conversations this led to. And it turns out some of them, they were discounting the maintenance to 0 in year 1. So the customers were never expecting to pay for maintenance. But conversely, they were still phoning up.
Yeah.
People were spending time like maintaining them. So
Of course.
all of this led to like redoing the policy. The company use Zendesk now, so they can actually book in calls. They can work out how much time is
Ticketing
charged.
system.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good way of saying it. And and if they do extra work beyond maintenance now, they can charge out, and the team get like a bonus for that.
Oh, wow.
So they're doing a lot of work which the customer didn't value because they weren't paying for, and there was just no kind of link between, this is the work they're doing, this is the money it can generate, this is what the customer's paying for, this is the end outcome. So now they sell maintenance as standard. Even if they discount it to a lower level, and it's renewed next year automatically.
Yeah.
So that was something that came out of, data whispering, as you call it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of scratching through their data, right?
Yeah, so hopefully now they are a SaaS business because they're selling a service as they go, but they weren't quite doing it now.
Epic. Okay, cool. So let's maybe jump into a few quick fire questions.
Okay.
What's one piece of software, and don't say Sift or Xero, that you can't live without? It could be an app on your phone, or a software that you work from.
Okay. Well, as an accounting practice, and we're Xero focused, Xero would be the obvious answer. If you took that away tomorrow, that would be a problem.
Yeah.
But he said not to say Xero. I'm trying to find a random one. Like currently, I've found Fireflies of all the note takers, and we use ChatGPT and all that. But Fireflies has a real great use case for us.
Yeah.
Because for discovery calls especially, it means I can focus on the client, record it down, and help with my presentations of their problems and so on.
Yeah.
And it's on my phone as well.
I've checked out Fireflies before. Its AI is pretty insane as well in terms of reporting and sentiment analysis
and there's other ones that do similar. I think AI is quite platform agnostic, and it's got a phone app as well, which works. So if I want to record this conversation, I can stick it on easily.
Amazing. Let's talk about a book or a podcast that you've read or listened to recently that left an impact for you.
So on the flight over, there's a book called I'm going to say it wrongly, The Almanac of Naval Ravikant.
Okay, I haven't heard of it.
Okay, it was recommended on, have you heard of Tim Ferriss, the 4 Hour Work Week?
Yes, yeah.
He was a guest on his podcast. I would say his podcast probably has changed my life. It sounds dramatic, but genuinely in terms of some of the principles and people he spoke to, it helped me quit my job at the time, start a business, going back 5-6 years ago.
Really left an impact.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's the 4 hour is a bit clickbaity, but it's not really about that at all. It's more about the principles of why you're working, what can you do. I'm sure he would sell it better than me.
Epic. I've got to check it out.
But anyway, he had a guest the other day, Naval Ravikant, and the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. Hope I'm saying it right. It's a really good read. I'll send you a copy. Really, loads of tidbits you can read quickly.
Nice. And then last quick fire question. If there was one thing that you would like listeners to take away from today's session, what would it be?
I would say, sorry, who are the listeners actually? I mean, is it people like me who are finance people, or business users?
Businesses, anyone really. It's on all platforms, so whoever's keen can check it out.
I would say the question to ask yourself is, how can I get the number of my business to tell me a story of the past, but more importantly of the future?
Impactful. Yeah, that's good.
Cool.
Nice. Summed it up quite nicely. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
I hope you enjoy the rest of your time in South Africa.
I'll do my best. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks so much, Gavin.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Insights podcast. Please like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to right now.
And please share with any of your colleagues or friends or family members that you think might benefit from listening to this podcast.
That's all from us. Until next time, see you then.